Hey everyone, it's Professor Clark, and in this lecture, we are going to review everything we've learned so far about verb stress. Let's start our review with stress in the non-past tense. Remember, Russian only has two tenses from the point of view of verb endings. It can express three tenses, past, present, and future, but as far as the endings go, there are only two possibilities, past and non-past. And let's start with the stress in the non-past. Stress for verbs in the non-past has three possibilities: stem stress, end stress, and shifting stress. The good news is that plain old stem stress is the most common. And we've seen this in lots of verbs, but let's just talk about the verb понимать as an example. So понимать, to understand, the stress is on that a in the infinitive. And then it stays on the throughout the paradigm. Я понимаю, ты понимаешь, она понимает, мы понимаем, вы понимаете, они понимают. End stress is less common, but you are very likely to find it in monosyllabic verbs such as жить, verbs of motion such as идти, and ava verbs such as вставать. And since we just looked at идти and вставать in the previous lecture, let's do a quick review of жить. So it is end-stressed throughout the paradigm with this v that pops up. So we have я живу, ты живешь, она живет, мы живем, вы живете, они живут. And then shifting stress is common for disyllabic verbs, especially second conjugation verbs, although you can also have it with first conjugation verbs. So remember our friend писать, to write, which becomes я пишу, ты пишешь. But this is particularly common for second conjugation verbs, and let's do a quick review of our friend учиться, to study or go to school. Я учусь, ты учишься, он учится, мы учимся, вы учитесь, они учатся. And so the takeaway from this is that there are three possibilities: stem stress, end stress, and shifting stress. Stem stress is by far the most common, and if you see a verb with three or more syllables, it is very, 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 very likely that it will have stem stress. So if you see a long verb, like понимать or изучать, you can be like, relief. You might think, as an English speaker, that long words are scary, but in Russian, long words are actually a lot more regular. And so if you see a verb with three or more syllables, there's a really good chance that it has stem stress and it's just going to remain fixed on the stem and you don't have to worry about it. End stress, you do have to worry about. If you see a verb that has a single syllable, you want to be watching out because you know something hinky is going to happen. And it's very likely that it will be end stressed. And then if you see a disyllabic verb, a verb with two syllables, you want to watch out for those babies because they frequently have shifting stress. Not always. Читать, for example, has fixed stress. Ложиться has fixed stress. But chances are excellent with a verb with two syllables, especially if it's second conjugation, that it will have a shifting stress. Now let's talk about stress in the past. Stress in the past tense also has three possibilities: stem stress, end stress, and shifting stress. But these are not necessarily the same verbs. A verb can have fixed stress in the non-past, but shifting stress in the past, and vice versa. So you have to learn the stress paradigms for the non-past and the past separately for each verb. However, once again, stem stress is the most common, especially for multisyllabic verbs. So if you see a verb with three or more syllables, chances are excellent that it has fixed stress in both the past and the non-past, and you are good to go. And we can see this, for example, with понимать once again. Он понимал, она понимала, оно понимало, они понимали. That stress stays fixed on the in every form of the verb. And then, once again, end stress is common for verbs of motion. So if you see a verb of motion, it's very likely that it will have end stress in both the past and non-past forms. So in that case, the stress tends to line up. It doesn't always for all verbs, but with verbs of motion, you tend to get end stress in all forms. And so let's look at paiti, to set off on foot. On pashol, ana pashla, ano pashlo, ani pashli. And notice this shol, shla, shlo, shli thing happening here. Verbs of motion in Russian tend to be irregular, just like they do in English. So just like in English, we have I go, I went. It's like, where did that come from? In Russian, we have the same thing. Paiti, pashol. This sh pops up out of nowhere. And also notice the yo in the masculine ending because it's under stress. So we have pashol. And then finally, shifting stress is not very common except for monosyllabic verbs. And once again, anytime you see a monosyllabic verb, your alarm bells should be going off and you should be like, I need to check the stress paradigm because I bet something funny is going to happen. Not all monosyllabic verbs have shifting stress in the past tense, but many of them do. And when you have a stress shift in the past tense, the feminine ending is going to be stressed, and then all the other forms will have a stress on the stem. And we can see this, for example, with the verb быть, to be. Он был, he was. Она была, she was. Оно было, it was. Они были, they were. So the feminine a ending is stressed, and then all the other forms have their stress on the uy of the stem. So there we have our review of stress possibilities or stress paradigms in Russian verbs. And the thing to take away from it is that you do have to learn it on a verb-by-verb basis. There are only 3 possibilities, but you have to learn for each verb what particular form they have. However, longer verbs are almost certainly going to have a stem stress, and then shorter verbs and verbs of motion are likely to have some kind of stress shift or end stress or something strange happening. So bear that in mind.